Okay, we're going to do lesson 13-5. You're going to go to page 697 in your math workbook page, 697. Okay, so when we're looking at fractions, what we want to do here, sometimes it's easy to think, okay, if we're looking at a whole number, half is obviously halfway between 0 and 1. So if a fraction is smaller than 1/2, it's going to be closer to 0 over here. Or if it's bigger than 1/2, it's going to be closer to 1. So if you're looking at this here, this is our halfway mark. So if a fraction is over here on a number line, it's closer to 1. Or if it's over here, then we say if it's less than half, then it's closer to 0. Okay, that's called using a benchmark. The benchmark is the halfway mark. Okay, so Mr. Evans wrote that 2/8, 4/8, 6/8, 1/8, 3/8, 5/8, and 7/8 on the board. Then he circled the fractions that are closer to 0 than to 1. Which fractions did he circle? So if you're looking at 1/2, you want 1/2 to be right here. Which one of these is equivalent to 1/2? Should be 4/8, right? Okay, so if you're looking at well, you could just put 4/8 right here, okay? 4/8 would be the halfway mark. So which one of these, he wants to know which ones are closer to 0 than to 1. So he wants to know which one of these fractions would be over here. Well, would 2/8 be over here? Sure. 2/8 is going to be smaller than 4/8. So 2/8 would be over here, right? How about 4/8? No, that's going to be exactly the mid mark. The middle mark is not closer to 0, nor is it closer to 1. It's not closer to either. It is right smack in the middle, okay? It's like that 5. All right, 6/8 is going to be over here, right? So 6/8 is not closer to 0 than it is to 1. How about 1/8? Sure, 1/8 is going to be way down there, okay? 3/8, is 3/8 going to be over here? Sure. 5/8 would be over here, so it is not closer to 0 because it's going to be over there. And 7/8 is going to be over here. So he would have circled 2/8, 1/8, and 3/8. Okay, so we'll write that. 2/8, 1/8, and 3/8. Eric says that 3/8 is closer to 1 than to 0 because 3/8 is greater than 1/8. Is he correct? Well, he is correct that 3/8 is greater than 1/8. But if we're using a benchmark, that's half, right? Okay. We got 1 and we have 0 and half is right here, okay? So if we're talking about 8s, then half is 4/8, right? 4 is half of 8. So he says that 3/8 is closer to 1. Is 3/8 going to be bigger than 4/8? Is it going to be bigger than the halfway mark? It's not. 3/8 is going to be over here. So is he correct? No. Because 3/8 is less than the half benchmark. Okay, in order to be closer to 1, it needs to be over here. It needs to be greater than 1/2. Okay? He needs to compare, actually, you know what the big thing is? That if he's going to use benchmarks, he needs to compare 3/8 to 4/8, not to 1/8, because 4/8 is the benchmark on that. That's where you're deciding. That's the halfway mark. Okay, Carrie wants to buy 2/6 of a container of roasted peanuts, and Alan wants to buy 2/3. Who will buy more peanuts? Okay, well, first, I know we're going to use benchmarks on this, but let's just use our handy-dandy flip book here. 2/6 compared to 2/3, okay? Okay, again, before we even do this, I want you to think about the denominators. 6 compared to 3. If I take a jar and I divide it into 3 equal parts, compared to if I take the same jar and I divide it into 6 equal parts, right? Each 1/3 part is bigger. So if I have 2 of those compared to 2 of the 1/6, my 2/3 is bigger. I mean, it just is because my thirds are bigger, okay? But let's just go ahead and take a look at this. 2/3 compared to 2/6. Here are 2/3, and right here would be 2/6, right? 2/3 is definitely bigger than 2 of these little 1/6 guys, okay? Because my thirds are bigger. They're twice as big as the 6, right? So, but they want us to compare each fraction to the benchmark of half, okay? So here's 0 and 1. This would be a halfway mark, okay? So if we're talking about 2/6, my halfway mark, if it was 6, would be 3/6, right? Because 3 is half of 6. So if this was divided into 6 equal parts, 3/6 would be right in the middle. So 2/6 would be over here. That's definitely less than 1/2. Now, 2/3, okay, if I divided this, I did not do that right. I'm going to draw over these little guys here. Okay, this is 0, this is 1. Divide this into thirds, okay? And 2/3, this would be my little halfway mark, right? 2/3 is going to be way over here. Okay, so 2/3 is definitely greater than my 2/6, okay? Right here. Okay. Candace buys 2/8 of a container of roasted peanuts from the same size container used by Carrie and Alan. She says 2/8 is between 1/2 and 1, so she buys more peanuts than Alan. Okay, she's talking about 2/8. So this is my halfway mark. If we were dividing into 8 sections, what would be halfway? How many eighths is half? 4/8, right? Because 4 is half of 8. So where would 2/8 be? About right here, right? Be smaller. 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8. So she says 2/8 is between 1/2 and 1. Is she correct? No, it's between 0 and 1/2. It's not closer to 1. So is she correct? No. Two eighths is less than half, right? I got a little messy there. Sorry, guys. Okay, let's take a look here at the guided practice. All right, Tina used benchmark numbers to decide that 3/8 is less than 7/8. Okay, we can use, let's look at eighths, okay? Here's 3/8, right here. Here's my halfway mark. I'm gonna move this over like this, so you can see. Okay, so we're looking at 3/8 compared to 7/8. So 3/8 is right here. Here's my halfway mark, right? That's my benchmark. This stuff over here is closer to 0, and this is closer to 1 over here. So we have 3/8 compared to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7/8 would be here, right? So 7/8 goes all the way to here. 3/8 goes right here, right? This is 3/8. That whole thing is 7/8. So she says 3/8 is less than 7/8. Do you agree? I hope so, right? So 3/8 is less than 7/8. Now, I don't have enough room to write it, but what you can write is that 3/8 is less than 1/2 and 7/8 is more than 1/2. So that her statement is correct. All right, write two fractions with a denominator of 6 that are closer to 0 than to 1. Okay, again, we're going to use our 6. This is our halfway mark. So we want ones that are closer to 0 than to 1. So we want ones over here. We can't use 3/6 because 3/6 is exactly halfway. That is not closer to 0, nor is it closer to 1. It is exactly right smack in the middle. So you cannot use 3/6. So your only choice is to use 1/6 or 2/6. Okay, 4/6 is going to be too big. 5/6 is going to be too big. 6/6 is definitely, it is all the way to 1. So our choice would be 1/6 and 2/6. Okay, write two fractions with a denominator of 8. There, we'll get that set up. That are closer to 1 than to 0. That means these have to be bigger than half. They have to be past the halfway mark. So let's look at our 8s. Okay, here's the halfway mark. So we want any of these 8s over here. So you could use 5/8, 6/8, 7/8. I would not use 8/8 because it is 1. It's not close to 1, it is 1. So you could use 5/8, 6/8, or 7/8. You need to write 2 of those there, okay? Which fractions, here. Choose from the fractions. We have 1/8, 1/4, 6/8, and 3/4. Of those, which fractions are closer to 0 than to 1? Okay, so I like to write these up here. We got 1/8, 1/4, 6/8, and 3/4. These can be our only answers, okay? It says use those for 4 to 6. So these are our only answer choices here for 4, 5, and 6. Which fractions are closer to 0 than to 1? So, okay, let's look at those. 1/8, 1/4, 6/8, and 3/4. So we got 1/8, 1/4, 6/8, and 3/4, okay? All right. So 1/8, okay, if we're looking at the eighths, our halfway mark is right here. So all of these are closer to 0, and all of these are closer to 1. So we want to know for number 4, which fractions are closer to 0. Okay, so those are our choices: 1/8, 1/4, 6/8, and 3/4. So let's find 1/8. Is 1/8 closer to 0? Yes, it is. How about 1/4? Here's 1/4. Is that closer to 0? Sure, as long as it's smaller than our halfway mark and it's over here, that's closer to 0. So 1/4 is 2. So how about 6/8? Here's our 8s, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is not closer to 0. That's going to be closer to 1. And how about 3/4? 1, 2, 3. Sorry. 1, 2, 3. 3/4. That's going to be closer to 1 than to that. So I want you to write 2 fractions that are closer to 0 and then 2 fractions that are closer to 1. Go ahead and pause that and then come back. Okay, so closer to 0 would be 1/8 and 1/4, and then this should be 6/8 and 3/4. Okay. Use the 2 fractions with a denominator of 8 to write a true statement. So we got 1/8 and 6/8. So which one we want it like this: 1/8 is less than 6/8, right? We have the same number of 8s. So if we have 6, the 8s are the exact same size. So if we have 6 of them, we certainly have a greater amount than if we only have 1. Okay, independent practice. I want you to pause this right now. I want you to do your best on the front and the back, and then unpause and you can correct it. But please be sure that you are being honest with yourself and not cheating yourself out of this opportunity to learn. Okay, this is not being graded, is being graded for completion. So, but if you just follow the video right now and you just write down your answers, you're not learning anything, and that's not going to help you at all. Okay, so pause it and then do it and then come back and correct. Okay, which fractions are closer to 0 than to 1? Okay, so here we have 1/4. This is going to be 2/6 is also going to be. Those are the 2 that are closer. It doesn't matter. You could write 2/6 first and then 1/4. It doesn't matter. But those are your 2 fractions. Closer to 1 is going to be 2/3 and 7/8. Okay. All right, we're going to have less than, greater than, greater than, greater than, less than, and greater than. Okay, let's take a look at the back. Now you should have already done this. Now, but again, if you get stuck and you had to, when you were doing this and you read it and went, oh my goodness, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. Then as I'm explaining it, I want you to pause it and try to finish that one to give yourself the chance to think it through and see if you can come up with the answer and then correct it. So you may need to pause me right now if you had some trouble on the back and just let me go through the problems with you and then pause it, do it, and then let me continue on with the next one with you, okay? Who has walked closer to 1 mile than to 0 miles? would be Mr. Nunez, because 5/6 is greater than 1/2. And, okay, that's exactly half. Less than 1/2, less than 1/2. That's exactly half, so that's not closer to either one, but Miss Lee also. Okay, who has walked closer to 0 than to 1? That means which one of these is less than 1/2. So that would be Miss Avery, Mrs. Avery, and Miss Chang. Okay. Who has walked a fraction of a mile that's closer to neither 0 nor 1? Now we're, okay, it's not closer to 0 and it's not closer to 1. We're looking for exactly halfway, which is Mr. O'Leary. Explain, that would be because 4/8 is equal to 1/2, which is right in the middle. So it's not closer to either one, okay? It's right in the middle. Rule compares two holes that are the same size, okay? He says that 2/6 is less than 2/3 because 2/6 is less than 1/2 and 2/3 is greater than 1/2. Is he correct? Yes, he is. Because if you look on a number line, it's because 3/6 would be the halfway mark. You don't have to write all this. I'm trying to think of the easiest way that you could explain this. The easiest way to explain it would be probably like draw the number lines and show that 2/6 is closer to 0 because it's less than 1/2, and 2/3 is greater than 1/2, and so it's closer to 1. But I mean, you're talking about writing a paragraph here. You could have also used your fraction flip book to show that 2/6 compared to 2/3. So here you had 2/6, and then up here you have 2/3, which would have gone there, okay? That's a lot. Don't worry about how much you had to write. I would have liked you to at least show me somehow saying that you used your fraction flip book, or that you could have said that each of the 3 parts is bigger than each of the 2 parts, and therefore you have 2 of each, so it could work that way. Okay, Manish drives 265 more miles than Janice. Manish drives 642 miles. How many miles does Janice drive? So he drives that much and he drives that much more. So you would have to go 642 minus 265 to figure out Janice. Okay, because Janice drives less than him because he drives 265 miles more. So it's basically Janice plus 265 equals Manish, which is 642. Okay, and if you want to figure out what plus 265 equals 642, you would subtract those two numbers to get a smaller number there. This can't be a big number. This cannot be 800 and something, because 800 plus 200 is not going to equal 600. So this has to be a smaller number, which, you know, you have addition here, so you can only add these two numbers or subtract those two numbers. Remember how addition and subtraction are married, right? So if you're missing a number, you can only, and you have addition or subtraction in there, you can only add or subtract the two numbers to find the other one. So we know this is going to be a smaller number, so we're going to subtract, okay? Okay, so 377 miles is how many miles Janice drives, which makes sense. He drives 265 more miles than Janice. If she drives 377 plus 265, that equals to 642. All right, Nika has 90 pencils. 40 of them are yellow, 13 are green, 18 are red, the rest blue. How many blue pencils? Okay, so if we have 90 pencils total, is equal to 40 plus 13 plus 18 plus the blue ones, right? So what you want to do is get this number all together, keep your 90, and we want to add, do a little separate piece of paper here. We're going to add 40 plus 13 plus 18, okay, which is 11, 5, 6, 7, 71. So we basically now have 90 pencils is equal to 71 plus the blue, okay? So again, we want to find a missing number. We can either add these two numbers together or we can subtract them. We have an addition going on here. So addition and subtraction are married, right? So we can either do 71 plus 90 and get this number, or 90 minus 71 and get this number. So you need to ask yourself, is this number bigger or smaller than 90? We're going to take 71, we're going to add some number to it, and we're going to get to 90. That's going to be a small number. It's certainly not going to be 161. We can't do 71 plus 161 and miraculously only have 90, okay? So we're going to do 90 minus 71. And no, that does not. Yep, that's right. Okay, so the blue equals 19. Does that make sense? If we did 71 plus 19, we would equal 90, okay? So the number of blue should be 19. Sorry, I left myself nowhere to write. 19 blue. Sometimes we have to work it out on a different piece of paper. Okay. Omar says that 2/3 is less than 4/6 because 2/3 is between 0 and 1/2 and 4/6 is between 1/2 and 1. Well, let's see. 2/3 is between 0 and 1/2. Let's move this over here. Okay, 2/3. Here's the halfway mark. So is 2/3 between 0 and 1/2? No. He's saying 2/3 is over here. 2/3, 1/3, 2/3 is over here. And 4/6 is between 1/2 and 1. Well, that's right. 4/6 is between 1/2 and 1, but 2/3 is not. So is he right? No, he's not. Poor Omar. No, because 2/3 is between 1/2 and 1, okay? So if we're looking at 2/3 compared to 4/6 here, we got 2/3 and we have 4/6. They're actually equivalent. Look where those lines are. 2/3 ends here and 4/6. They're the same, okay? Neither one of them is bigger. They're the same. And if we did our cool multiplication here, 3 times 2 is 6 and 2 times 2 is 4. So we know they are equivalent. Okay, let's take a look at the last one here. Write each fraction in the correct answer space to show whether the fraction is closer to 0 or to 1. Okay, you had to use your fraction flip book here. Okay, so we want 1/8. So this is our halfway mark. If it's less than 1/2, it's going to go over in this box. If it's greater than 1/2, it's going to go over here. So let's just take it one at a time. 1/8. Here's our halfway mark. 1/8 is over here. So 1/8 is definitely in our smaller. How about 6/8? Here's our halfway mark. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's going to go over in this box. It's closer to 1. It's bigger than 1/2. Okay. How about 2/3? Okay, here's our halfway mark. So where does 2/3 land? Over here. Okay, 3/4. Okay, here's our halfway mark. So 1, 2, 3. 3/4 is over here. Okay, 2/6. Here's our halfway mark. So 2/6 is over here. And 1/6. So it's going to be over here too. Okay, great job today, guys.